Thank you everyone for joining us today. It is Tuesday, June 9th, and I'm very happy to be welcoming Eric Van Steenberg, who is a professor of marketing at Montana State University. I met Eric just over a year ago. It was actually just a few weeks before, or maybe just a few days before I started my work at the Community Foundation. He was at a training that was hosted by the Bozeman Area Community Foundation. If you don't know already, they do a monthly nonprofit cafe Friday morning training event. It's currently being held at the Bozeman Library, and they cover a lot of terrific topics. That one was on different marketing outreach strategies. And it was where one of the topics at hand was recommending that somebody from your organization register to or be nominated to win the Bozeman 20 Under 40 award. And I actually remembered that for months and reminded Gavin to get himself nominated, and then he won. So that was a very useful tip that I got from that training. In addition to being a professor, Eric is also currently on the board of the Bozeman Area Community Foundation. He has extensive background in nonprofit and for-profit businesses. One of his nonprofit areas that he worked in is he was executive director for a Rails to Trails program in Dallas, if I remember correctly. And he has an extensive list of educational background and research expertise, which I will hand him the mic and he can tell you more about his background. And then he's going to be giving us a high-level overview of some marketing strategies. And we'll wrap up by looking at some examples of 2019 Give a Hoot tactics with our guest examples from Heidi Barrett with Aspen, Lil Erickson with Western Sustainability Exchange, and Gigi Albers is here on behalf of Farm to School of Park County. Okay, Eric, take it away.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Barb, so much for offering to let me do this. This is something I'm very passionate about, as you were just saying. I do have not just a soft spot in my heart for the nonprofit industry, but a real desire to want to help nonprofit organizations. My career started, interestingly, I was a sports writer, a journalist, and then became a sports editor for a daily newspaper for a while before I got tired of long hours and low pay and jumped into the marketing side of things as a public relations writer and director. And then I kind of put it all together, and I did marketing for a magazine that covered the concert industry, which was really cool, but they were running on a shoestring budget. So I started getting used to that. And then went corporate marketing for a while before I ended up as the executive director for that nonprofit organization in Dallas. It was a Rails to Trails project, as Barb said, $30 million project that I was responsible for, not only leading the $30 million fundraising effort, but also managing a $500,000 annual budget as well, which was a great experience. But the coolest thing about it is it gave me the time, gave me some flexibility and time to be able to go get my master's degree. And then I started teaching at Southern Methodist University there in Dallas. And after 3 years of that, the chair of the department said, would you just go get your PhD and be done with it, because you're really good at this. So I did. And what's important about that is the woman who I studied under for my doctorate was the president of a board of a nonprofit organization. So she had passion for it also. And so I ended up doing my whole dissertation on nonprofit advertising and the ability to raise funds through certain communications messages. And that fit in nicely with what I've been doing in my career, because everything I've done up to then was really about strategic communications. And that is something that I love too. And so I love putting those two things together. How can we use strategic communications in the nonprofit context? Now, just to give you a little warning, the other area that I do research is in political communications too. So I dabble in both political communications and nonprofit communications, but I won't talk politics today, I promise. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly through a whole bunch of things that I'm going to give you to think about when it comes to communication strategy. Again, I came out of a communications background, and I teach marketing communications now at MSU. That's what I was hired to do. It's my favorite class. I absolutely love teaching marketing communications because I love teaching students how to think strategically, because you've got to think strategically when it comes to communications, or else you're wasting your time and your money. So that said, I'm going to pull up my slides now. Barb, if you would keep track of any questions or comments or reactions in the chat box, because I won't be able to see it while I'm doing this.
Absolutely.
And if somebody has a question, please feel free to ask, jump in, interrupt. That's fine. Barb, just let me know what the question is, and we'll tackle it. Okay? All right. Let's share my slides here. So I was asked to talk about impactful communication strategies. And I love this combination of marketing and strategy, because again, if you don't think strategically, then you're wasting your time and probably somebody's money, and you don't want to do that. I often show this to my students. You've probably seen this before yourself, that strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, and tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. I actually I took some students on something I call an agency crawl, kind of like a pub crawl, but we go from marketing agency to marketing agency. And one of them had huge signs up on the wall that said this: strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is a noise before defeat. You have to put these two things together, or else it just won't work. And then I'm going to show you a couple more things that you need to add to strategy and tactics as well. So I'm actually going to show you that strategy and tactics will be the fourth thing out of 5 that you should be considering. Okay, when I teach marketing communications to my students, I say, here are the 5 things that you need to consider for a strategic communications or strategic marketing communications plan. The first one is a situation analysis. Think about where things are, right? What's the external environment like? We have obviously are in a situation today where we've got both health issues that people are concerned about and economic issues that people are concerned about. So that's the external environment that you need to be thinking about. You also need to be thinking about competition. And you know, a mistake a lot of nonprofits make is they say, well, we don't have any competition because we're the only ones that do this one thing. And my response is, and so are the other nonprofits not raising money? Because everybody's looking to get assistance to help to support your cause. And in addition to that, you're not only competing against other nonprofits, you're competing for their discretionary income. And so after they've paid all their bills and everything they need to do to live, they're making a decision. Should I donate to the nonprofit, or should I go out and get a cheeseburger? And that's where you are. So that's the external environment that I encourage you to consider. Where are things today and how does that affect you? And then also part of the situation analysis is the internal environment, looking at that. And the most common way to do an internal assessment is a SWOT analysis. I'm sure you're all familiar with the SWOT analysis. So if you haven't done one of those, think about it, because they can really help. You know, the strengths and weaknesses are how your organization, advantages and disadvantages you have in comparison to that competition. That's what the strengths and weaknesses are. Opportunities and threats are then the external environment and impact that it can have on you. And of course, we want to focus on those opportunities because that's where you can make the biggest difference. So that's really situation analysis. It's a good place to start and say, here's where we are. The next step is goals and audience. And this is very simple. It's what do we want to accomplish and who do we want to reach? Now, for some people, it's pretty obvious. You know, for nonprofits, when I use them as clients in my marketing communications class, I say from a macro level, the audience is pretty simple. It's donors, it's volunteers, and it's beneficiaries. But you may want to drill down a little bit from that too. Goals tend to be pretty simple also. It's what do you want to accomplish? Just remember, you want to make it measurable. Okay, let's say you want to hit the $10,000 mark in the month of fundraising, or maybe you want to bring in 1,000 donors, or maybe you want to bring in 100 new donors in that month. Whatever it is, make sure that it's measurable. And so therefore you can point everything that you do from a strategic communications wise to accomplishing that goal. The third part of the strategic plan is positioning and key messages. So if goals are what you want to accomplish and audiences is who you want to reach, positioning and key messages is simply what you want to say, right? Now, what you want to think about is what differentiates your company, your nonprofit, your brand from other ones. That's why we do that situation analysis. So you can say, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is why you might care. Positioning is the foundation to the brand. Finally, we get to strategies and tactics. Now we're talking about execution. We're talking about what you plan to do to reach these people that you've identified with what you're going to say. I'm going to talk about details about all of these as I go along. The last part of the strategic plan is measurement and evaluation. You want to know what's working and what's not. It's really simple. If it's working, double down on it. If it's not, kill it. You never know. You may come up with great ideas and you implement these strategies and tactics after you've identified everything else, and some work and some don't. But you have to have a way to measure and evaluate if it is or if it isn't. Again, you got to know where you're going. If you don't, you're just going to get lost. Now, I like showing this slide to my students because I say, who's Lewis Carroll? And they don't know. I'm not going to challenge you to identify who Lewis Carroll is. If you want to challenge yourself and write it in the comment section right now, you can. But I assume all of you know who Lewis Carroll is. But he has a very good point. You've got to know where you're going, or else you won't know what road to take. This is why we look at the audiences too. And the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to audiences is they think about it in terms of, say, demographics. And demographics are just one measure. That's all it is. So let's say you wanted to go after white men who from UK nationality, had a large family, high net worth. You can narrow it down to their certain age if you wanted to. Well, you know who this describes? This describes both Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne. And so I challenge you. Do you think these two have the same consumption behaviors? Do you think they have the same donation behaviors? Do you think they have the same behaviors at all? No, of course not. So you've got to think very carefully about who you want to reach with your messaging, because if you're too broad or focus just too carefully on just demographic variables, then you're not going to get the response that you want, because people won't react to your messages. So what you've got to understand is why. Why would someone want to engage with your organization? Okay, what is it about your organization that makes them go, that's going to solve my problem? Because if you think about it, everything that we do as human beings is to solve a problem that we have, whether it's an actual problem or a perceived problem. You know, the simple way to look at this is, you know, when you're thirsty, you need something to drink. Okay, we as you know, other people can't make you thirsty. You get thirsty on your own and you say, I'm going to get something to drink. Now, what you choose to drink is what you're looking for to solve that problem. Okay? I drink one Diet Coke every morning. I do it because I want a little bit of caffeine. I don't want to drink too much sugar, and I hate coffee. It just makes me have to pee. So, you know, why did I choose a Diet Coke? Because it hits some of those other aspects. You need to ask yourself, why would someone want to engage with your brand? And as you see there at the very end of what that says up on the screen is, people seek a defined solution. So I challenge you to think about what you do in terms of a solution. Because the biggest mistake that companies make, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, is they think about what they do in terms of a product. If you think about what you do in terms of a product, that just means you're not listening to your audience. That just means that you think, I'm going to build it and they will come. So you need to think about what they are looking for. For example, let's say that you ran a shelter for animals, okay? And so you may think, okay, what we do, our solution is we run a shelter for animals. But that doesn't explain why someone would want to come to that shelter, okay? Maybe they're looking for companionship. Maybe they're looking to make sure that animals don't get euthanized. Maybe they're looking to get a present for their kids. Each one of those is a solution they may seek from that animal shelter. Okay, so I challenge you to think about, what solution do you solve for people? What is it that they might be looking for that you can say, oh, we do that. We have that answer for you. And that's hard. It's really hard. It takes a lot of brain power to do this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give a presentation. Barb was talking about Nonprofit Cafe, and I'm on the docket to give a presentation at the Bozeman Area Community Foundation, I believe in August. And I'm actually going to have a worksheet for everybody where they actually have to think about the answer to this question, and they'll come up with what their defined solution is for their nonprofit organization, which again is the foundation for the brand. So why? That's the big question. Why would someone want to give? Why would someone want to volunteer? Why would someone want to engage with your organization? So think about that. In doing so, I give my students something called an ABLE axis, and they have to actually work on this as part of their big strategic marketing communications they do. And so it's a three-dimensional axis. You've got the X, Y, and Z axes on it. And at the top is what's that solution? The top of that Y axis, what's that solution? What is it that is being satisfied by what you do? Okay, because that's going to explain why somebody would want to give or volunteer or engage with your brand. Who's being satisfied is very simple. These are your audiences. And again, at a macro level for a nonprofit organization, it's donors, volunteers, and beneficiaries. I challenge you to go a little deeper than that. Go to a micro level, identifying who is being satisfied. And then how is being satisfied is what we call the Z axis. That's a three-dimensional one coming at you. And I, again, will challenge you to think about what other ways might someone be able to solve that same problem. Remember that animal shelter might be in the, some people might be looking to get a present for their child, let's say, a puppy for their child or their family, a pet for their family, or something for the family. They don't have to go to an animal shelter. They can do all kinds of they can go to a pet store. Let's say they're just looking for a gift for the kid's birthday. Well, they don't even have to go get a pet at all. They could do something else. And so on this ABLE axis, that how is it being satisfied is you thinking about what other ways might someone be able to solve that same problem they have. Now, a lot of nonprofit giving people do simply because it makes them feel good. All right. Well, guess what? There's a lot of other things we can do to make ourselves feel good too. I like to ride the bike. That doesn't help you with fundraising though, does it? So you've got to think about in these terms. Okay, just to give you a tip on positioning, I told you this is the foundation of your brand. These are the things that you want to say about yourself that differentiate it from anybody else. And so definitionally, positioning is what you try to communicate to your audiences regarding your brand. And it's always relative to the competition, because when I want that Diet Coke in the morning, I sit there and I go, should I have a cup of coffee? Should I have a Diet Coke? Should I have a Diet Pepsi? Should I have water? Okay. We always make these comparisons. And so, you know, when the giving month happens, people are going to say, well, should I give to this nonprofit or this nonprofit or this nonprofit? And they're going to make a decision a lot based on what you're saying about yourselves. And so if you are the nonprofit that does this one thing better than anybody else, say that. And then you own that position. All right, now we're finally into goals, strategies, and tactics. They do relate to one another. Goals drive strategies, and strategies drive tactics. Now, definitionally, I'm going to give you these because it's really simple to remember this. Goals are just your desired outcomes. This is what you want to accomplish. Strategies are just ideas to accomplish those goals. And tactics are the actions to execute those strategies. That's all it is, okay? Let's say the goal is to get people to come to your website to give. Strategy might be, hey, let's do some Google text ads, the kind that show up on the search engines. Let's do some advertising. The tactic may be, let's do specifically Google search ads that show up on the search engines, okay? So again, goals, desired outcomes, strategy, ideas to accomplish the goals, tactics, actions to execute strategies. I often tell my students to create an outline, make it look like an outline. You know how you used to do book reports back in elementary school and junior high, where you had to do 1, and then you had A, and then B and C, and then you had underneath A, B, and C, you had 1, 2, and 3. Well, that Roman numeral 1 is your goal. The letters A, B, and C are your strategies, and the numbers underneath those strategies are your tactics. That will help you organize what ones you want to do and with which audiences and when you want to do them. It's hard for us in the nonprofit industry to do marketing communications, because we've got more audiences that we have to think about. Some of you have policymakers that you are working with. There's the media that we have, the news media that we have to think about as well. The great thing about marketing communications is that we can influence behavior. If you're saying the right things to the right people and doing it at the right time, people will respond. You know, we all like to complain about advertising, but when we see an ad that's of interest to us, we pay attention and we usually react, and we usually react the way that that marketer wants us to. You have the same opportunity with your strategic communications to get people to react the way you want to. Hopefully give, come to your website, volunteer for your nonprofit, whatever it is that your goals are. For us in strategy, we need to think about how the communication model works. You're the sender. The audience you want to have receive your message at the end is the receiver, and you've got all these factors that go into the middle of it. That encoding, next layer, that's your positioning. What are you going to say about yourselves? Transmission device is where you're going to do that. So are you going to do it online? And if so, are you going to do it through something you own or something you don't own? Are you going to do it over radio? Or, you know, that's where you're going to do that communications is the transmission device. On the other side of that, you've got that perhaps donor who has to understand what your message is. They've got to be able to decode it. And so you've got to make it very simple. And that's why positioning is so important. They'll receive that message, but the whole time this is going on, there's lots of noise in that communications channel. And that could be anything from a competing message to them deciding to go for a hike instead of listening to what you're saying that day, and anything in between. Things are slightly different in the digital environment because all of us are senders and receivers, because we can all post on blogs. We've got our own websites. We've got social media. We've got email. There's numerous ways where we can create our own content and send it out to whoever we reach. So every one of us is both sender and receiver. And we have our own network of senders and receivers that we are connected to. And we can communicate with all of them. That's great. And some of them might communicate back to us, but some of them might communicate to each other and never let us know. And at the same time, you've got the audience that you're trying to reach for donations or what have you. And they're trying to reach those same people. And those messages are going all over the place and you have no control over it. Once you've delivered your message, it's out of your control because all of us are senders and receivers today. And so it looks like this unbelievable web that you can't have any control over anymore. But the reality is that it's still a relationship between sender and receiver. And if you can communicate that right message to the right audience at the right time, in the right place, they will respond.
Eric, we're just about at 5 minutes.
Perfect, perfect. Here's what you've got. Here are your options. Now I'm down into strategies and tactics still. Here are your options, okay? Advertising, I'm sure all of you are familiar with. Branding, I used to, in this particular case, I'm talking about things that communicate your brand. I'm talking about your logo and your tagline and your designs and so on. Community relations has to do with, you know, you guys partnering with perhaps a for-profit or another nonprofit to do something. I'm sure you're familiar with digital and all of your options there. I hope all of you know that at least you used to be able to get $10,000 in Google search ads every month if you want. That's the nonprofit perk that they offer, no charge for that. Direct marketing, or like we're going to hear in a little bit, those are the postcards and also email fits under that. You guys, I'm sure, are quite familiar with event marketing. Guerrilla marketing is anything that's out of the ordinary. People don't expect. The best example I can give of that is I saw, my students one time, the Baja, Bozeman Amateur Hockey Association was a client in my IMC class one time. And the students recommended that there be pickup hockey games on rollerblades on the Centennial Mall at MSU out of nowhere. So great idea and everyone's going to wear their Baja shirt. So pretty cool guerrilla marketing idea there. Interactive could be both online and offline. We're familiar with it online, but you can get people to interact with your outdoor elements as well. I don't think any of you have to worry about investor relations, but you do have donor relations. And so that's a part of marketing communications also, what you say to them. If you have a product that you're doing, there's packaging. If you have a storefront, online or offline, you've got point of sale where people are engaging with your brand to make their purchase or donation. You can do product placement where you are working with an organization, a for-profit organization. Oftentimes this is television, where you become part of the script or in the background of that. PR is something that you all should be doing if you're not, and this is working with news media, but don't forget influential bloggers and other influencers that you might want to direct your information to. Neutral information that they might want to turn into a story or tweet or communicate to their audiences. Sales promotions are discounts, and so I'm sure a lot of you do that when it comes to maybe if you have a membership level, you might, instead of charging $50 per person, if it's a whole family, you might do 95 or something like that, or you might do some special for a month, or who knows. I'm sure you're all familiar with social media. The challenge with social media is to know which social media platform is used by which audience. If you want to reach soccer moms, then that's then be on Facebook. But if you're trying to reach baby boomers, maybe not. Maybe there's a better place to be. If you want to reach millennials, older millennials donate, younger millennials still volunteer, they don't quite give yet. Then maybe Instagram is a place for you. So do your research and find out which social media is the right one based on the audience who you want to reach. Sponsorship, we can be involved with, as nonprofits, we can be involved with for-profits. They may want to partner with us. They might give you a booth or something at an event where you can, or maybe partner with them in some other way. Radio stations love to do this. Television stations love to do this. And so do existing events like here in Bozeman, the Sweet Pea Festival and the Christmas Stroll and so on. Telemarketing is actually something I did as a nonprofit executive director, where I was using that to reach lapsed members. I told you that I do research in political marketing as well. Well, when the Congress wrote the rules to block phone numbers, you can go to donotcall.gov and register your mobile number so you don't get spam calls. They left two organizations, two groups that could still call you anyway. One are nonprofits, yay, and the other one are politicians, boo. So of course they did, right? But anyway, I used it to reach out to lapsed members because we had a membership that funded our operations and maintenance of our trail. And so we reached out to lapsed members and we had a 30% success rate in getting people to rejoin. So if you do it well and you reach them at the right time, not at dinner, they will respond favorably. And then trade shows, these are existing shows that maybe might allow a nonprofit to participate at very low, if not reduced costs. The key with a trade show is that they reach a very specific audience, very, very specific audience. And that's why it's a trade show. There are one or two, well, there's one here in Bozeman that's specifically for children. And so my students had the Montana Outdoor Science School as the Montana Science Center as a client this last spring, and they found this trade show that targeted children that they said, you need to be at this show because that'll get people in your door.
Okay, so I was asked a series of questions to answer, and I'll try to do it as briefly as possible. So some of the things that we did was we added a Give a Hoot to the giving page of our website with a link that people could just click on and they'd go directly to the Give a Hoot site to be able to contribute. So we tried to make it as easy as possible. And we created a QR code that allowed people that we could put on any more published materials, so people could just use their phones to scan that, and again it would take them to that same place. We posted about the campaign on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to try to get it out to as many of our followers as possible. We made a slide about the campaign that we put on our Facebook cover photo, and then we also had a slide on our website. And we were asked how much time this all took, and boy, that's really hard to estimate. We were working pretty hard on it for the month gearing up, but we were also doing a lot of just summarizing our programs and stuff. So I can't really answer that very precisely. And then we did put together this mailer that you are seeing. It wasn't a mailer, actually, it was a postcard that we handed out, and we published it in-house so that we didn't do an extra run that we'd have to waste of paper and expense, and then at time that it takes if you're going to get them officially printed, you have to really back it off by about 10 days. So what we did is we just created it on the fly and printed it in-house, and if we needed more, we just printed more, and we were able to distribute it at the farmers market for the whole month, and at our workshops. We do a whole series of workshops in the summer, and so we distributed them there. We also had them, we gave copies to people so that they could hand them out to their friends, and it had our website on it, but it also had that QR code that made it easy for people to use their phones to donate. The cost was very minimal because we were using, paper and printer ink from our own stores, because we printed them in-house. And the print quality wasn't really great, but we felt like it didn't need to be, because they were just going to be used for such limited amount of time, and we could print just as many as we needed when we needed to. We will use this strategy again and incorporate many more, hopefully. We didn't put a goal, a donation goal or anything like that on there, but I think maybe that would be a good idea. I don't know how well we could track that, though, with at least any printed materials. So that's essentially what we did, and happy to answer any questions or anything that you might need to know more. Thank you.
Okay, Eric, I see you made a comment in the text box. Do you want to say something about that out loud for folks who aren't on the text?
Sure. So looking at that postcard, great direct mail piece, by the way. Looking at that postcard, as I said in the comments, I think those bullet points right there are a really good example of key messages that come from positioning that explain why somebody might want to engage with the organization. So that's the motivation right there that somebody might have. They see those bullet points and they say, yes, this is solving the problem that I have. I want to help them out.
Okay, great. Good job, Lil, too. That's really great. Looking at your postcard, that gave me some good ideas. Okay, so Aspen, we participated in the Hoot last year, and for preparing for it, the main thing was familiarizing ourselves with the Hoot page, and we spent a lot of upfront time putting together our statements on the Hoot page so that everything would be complete. We did do giving levels so that if people gave a certain amount, like say $108, they knew they were providing 1 hour of legal advocacy. Or if they gave $50, they were providing toiletries and food for people at our shelters. So those types of examples were things we did. So Lil had the same kind of thought I did of not knowing exactly how much time it took. I was the only staff person that put the information together on our Hoot site. So I would say it was well worth our time, because we got a great rate of return for the investment that we put into it. So it's well worth it. And if you haven't done it before, of course, we would encourage people to partake in the Hoot. We gained 21 new donors last year through the Hoot, which we thought was pretty good. It surprised us, actually. And this year, we're going to be reaching out to them specifically, the new people, and remind them again of the Hoot. And we do our marketing on Facebook and Instagram as well. I did like Lil's idea about linking people back to our website. We didn't really put something out that when people got to our website took them to the Hoot, but I think that's a great idea. So I appreciate that. Last year we did do some of the cheer pages, but they weren't very successful. So I don't know if it's that we didn't market them right, or if people were so overwhelmed with all the different organizations participating in the Hoot that no one was really paying attention to our little cheer pages. But I'd love to hear if other people had better luck on that. So I don't know how much time we'll spend trying to get people to do cheer pages this year, just because last year it didn't really seem to pay off for us. This year we're doing very much the same as we did last year, except that we'll have some new video content that's different than last year. And then we, of course, will just be updating everything as far as our programs go. And then lastly, we are going to have the money be for something specific. Last year we had a giving goal, but we didn't say, I mean, basically it was just general support. This year we're going to actually list what we'll be trying to raise the money for. And we hope that that'll make people feel like they're really giving to something specific. Otherwise, that's really all I had to say. I know that Barb had some of our examples of our Facebook and Instagram posts so that we could keep people informed of where we were on our goal, which was actually really fun because we during the last week or 10 days, we were able to update that regularly, and it was kind of fun. People were looking forward to see how we were doing almost on a day-to-day basis. So we enjoyed putting those together. And then we did use the Hoot logo in our newsletter and as the banner for our Facebook page as well during the Hoot.
There we go. Great. Do we have any questions or feedback for Heidi?
Yeah, I would like to mention, this is for everybody. So when you're doing this, make sure it's very wise to make sure that all of your communications materials are pointing to a site on a page on your website where you can either track something or get people to do something. For this next month, it might be pointing them to your donation page, or if there's a special page related to how you guys have set up your fundraising, point to that. So whether they are scanning the QR code, it takes them to that landing page, is what we call it, the landing page that's for donations, or they are typing it in off of the URL that you have listed on, say, that direct mail piece. It's got the URL, maybe, you know, Western Sustainability Exchange /donate, or sorry, .com/donate. Make sure that they're going to that particular page. You want people, and then all of your Instagram, all of your social media, have it also point to your landing page where you want them to go. The challenge and the key is to make sure that whatever you said in your direct mail piece or your email or your social media post lines up with whatever is on that landing page. As we all know from consumers, the worst thing that happens is you want to buy a sweater and you see something that says click here to buy a sweater, and you click on it and it takes you to a page for pants. You leave immediately. So just make sure whatever it is you're communicating lines up with, and that URL lines up with whatever you're saying on that landing page that you're taking people to.
Great. If folks have additional questions about the Aspen campaign, feel free to add them to the text box. And we are going to go now to Farm to School of Park County and hear from Gigi about 2019 strategies and what they have in mind for 2020.
Just quickly want to share our vision. The vision of Park County, Farm to School of Park County, is to put healthy, local, and sustainable foods on the plates and in the minds of all Park County school children. And we have been under the umbrella of Park County Community Foundation for a few years. We're now finally becoming our own nonprofit. I would say we definitely have had a lot of support to build it to the point that we are from Park County Community Foundation. So we were asked to kind of share our most successful strategies last year. And I would say our best return of investment definitely came from direct personal asks. We do spend a lot of time doing outreach in the community, so our potential donors know that we exist and what we're about. And then we really set up one-on-one meetings or phone calls where we go more in depth and explain more of what we do, and we make a personal ask. And the fact that these donations were being matched definitely made donors more inclined to donate. So that was definitely our best return of investment. But another thing that we did is we got a business sponsorship. We asked a local business to round up the amounts at the register. So if you bought something for, $7.85, that they would donate the last 15 cents to our organization. And that didn't generate a ton of money, but what it did do is really yet again get our message out there. Our executive director, Rachel Jones, spent a good amount of time training all the staff of that particular store. So the cashiers knew about our organization and asked every single client that would come by and could answer questions if they had one. And we did that for about 2 weeks. So again, we really got our message out, and with the help of another local business. And then the third thing that we did is we printed out materials. So we made some recipe postcards. The kids are, taught how to cook certain meals with all that local and healthy food. And we made postcards that we handed out. We also handed out an annual report and a brochure. And most of that happened really during the Hoot Parade, the 4th of July, the 4th of July parade, and then during the Hoot. And that was handed out by our executive director, and Farmer Eve, the person who kind of is in the classroom with the kids. So the kids recognize her, it's a familiar person. We handed out one more thing that were seed packages instead of candy to the kids. And to get our message out, I don't know really how much return we got from that, but we spend a lot of time sending out a message and then cultivating really personal relationships with larger donors. So that's kind of our strategy. Any questions?
Eric is mentioning in the chat line that one-on-one communications can in fact be one of the most successful fundraising efforts. And I think that is the conversations that I've had with some of the other nonprofits who I invited to share examples of their outreach tactics. Their experience was that really it was those direct conversations that really did make a big difference.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of really that the name sounds familiar, and then because we really do a lot. We have a very driven staff. So when we start telling people more in depth of what we do, they usually become more interested and often also passionate about what we do. And there's a connection. It's all about, there being a connection with the donors, and then because they want to donate. That's our experience. Mm-hmm. They're happy to donate. It makes them feel good.
Excellent.
The key to that success is being consistent in what you communicate. So that's why we develop that positioning and those key messages, so you can consistently communicate the same things over and over and over. That's how you develop a brand. And then make sure that you're communicating, again, that solution that you provide. So like for the Farm to School of Park County, the product is food for kids. The solution is something along the lines of never letting a child go hungry. Because, think about in terms of the donor, they're going to be giving to say, oh, I want to solve this problem. I want to solve this problem of hunger.
Yeah, so it's not, we're not, although we get support from No Kid Hungry, really what we're trying to also do is teach them about healthy food and local food and sustainable food. So during this pandemic, of course, we were really worried about kids going hungry. So we partnered with local restaurants and the school and organized 18 different drop-off locations every day for 1,000 meals a day, breakfast and lunch. But typically it's not really the hungry part. It's more teach them really healthy behaviors early on so they can have those for themselves and hopefully pass them on to their children. Yeah.
Thank you, Gigi, for sharing that experience from 2019. At this time, we are almost at time for this training session, so I want to invite Eric to give any wrap-up remarks.
In the comments over there in the chat, I put my email address. I'm going to share my screen again real quick so that you can see my contact information. If you want to get in touch with me, this is how you can do it. You do not hesitate to call me or text me on my mobile. Just tell me who you are, because otherwise I won't recognize you and I might think you're spam or something. So I know who you are. There's my mobile number. I give it to my students. I say, don't be afraid to text or call me. That's the only phone number I have. I don't have a home phone. This is it. So there's my email address. The last name's a little bit cumbersome. My students call me Dr. V, so they don't have to type out the whole thing every time. Well, at least not for after they've had me for one semester. But so eric.vansteenberg@montana.edu. First website, LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. It's a very valuable tool. If you're not using it for your organization, I would suggest you look into it. I'm on Twitter. I'm on other social media as well. That's how you can reach me. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. I did about 20% of the things that I could have said about strategic communications. I was up at a very high level the whole time. I can drill down with some very specific recommendations for you. If you want any more advice, I'm happy to give it.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your experiences from last year, Lil and Heidi and Gigi. Thank you, Steve, for sharing your experience in fundraising this year. And thank you to Eric for joining us virtually to giving us this great overview.